Hello and welcome to Start the Beat with Sykes. My name is Sykes and this is my podcast. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone who checked out the last conversation. If you're one of those people, thanks so much for coming back. But for everyone out there who's new to the show, feel free to make yourselves at home. And as always, there's beer and soda in the fridge. Cheers. All right. Well, what I've decided to do is I'm going to play a game with myself where I get to know you all by the beer that you all choose, because they're all different.
Oh, okay.
They're all different. So off the bat, I'm taking this one for me. We'll talk about that later.
You're a man of culture, I see.
So all of these beers are from my good friends at Noble Creature Brewing in Youngstown, Ohio. This show is not sponsored by Noble Creature in any way, shape, or form, but they are, and I kid you not, my favorite brewery on the fucking planet. So thank you for the beverages that you are not sponsoring the show with. But thank you for making them is all I am saying. So the first one up is a Faust beer. It's like a German Oktoberfest type thing.
Okay.
The second one here it's another lager. It is literally just like a good old normal Schwartz beer. So it's a black lager, actually, a little darker. And then we got the Doubles, which is a hazy pale ale, double dry hopped, kind of more of, the trendy sort of thing. So who's taking which beer?
Is it just wrong for me to just grab and go?
No.
You could do that too. It could be like everybody just grab and get what you're going to get. We could go for it. We want to do like a 3, 2, 1 count? Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Really? I thought you'd go with the hazy. That's interesting.
Blacker than the blackest black times infinity.
Well, now that we have gone through that entertaining game, cheers, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers to you.
And I am sipping on the Drown, which is a collaboration beer between Noble Creature and two Youngstown, Ohio. I believe they're both from Youngstown, Ohio bands, Rebreather and Frail, who recently just did a collaboration project together. Very cool. This is a stout, locally forged chanterelle mushrooms with wormwood and yeast and a bunch of weird shit, chocolate coffee. I have no idea what's going to go on here.
Mushrooms?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
This is your fucking party, dude.
So like more of an umami,
something rank coming out of you later.
Oh, that's a weird beer.
So like
That's
molasses
good.
flavor? Is
that tastes absolutely nothing like I thought it was going to taste like, but
okay.
I like it. How's everyone's drinks?
Love it.
I like it.
Like it.
Blacker
Very
than the
nice
blackest
citrus. It's obviously a hazy IPA, so you have the hops. It's drier. But not as citric as most people. I think a lot of breweries really overdo the citrus to try and compensate for a hazy. That's a bad move. Don't do that. And it seems like they got it right here. It's a very tasteful application of citric acid. Look at me talking.
Love it. I love it.
Anything.
Well, for anyone that is not familiar with today's guests, I'm sitting here with 3/3 of the one and only Shadow of Corvus. Make some noise for the internet.
That's so good. I didn't even thought about using
3/3? You're the. I mean, dude, you're the comedian of the band.
Right, but I'm not the brains of the band. That
Yeah,
implies.
I don't think we have brains.
Yeah, no. Well, that's why it's 3/3. Each one of us brings a third of a human brain to the band, and then when we're
Maybe
on
a
stage,
third.
Yeah,
That's
well,
one way to
depends-
look at it. Yeah,
Depends
yeah.
on how much of this lovely beer we have. It could end up being 2/3. One of us might drop out due to a blackout. We'll see.
And why is that person me?
I was gonna say the one in the running is definitely Alex.
That's what happens when you play in a pop punk band, man.
Is what it
Maybe
is.
just,
Is what
you
it
know.
is.
Needless to say, his lifestyle will determine his death style.
If there's anyone that'll
All
fit
right,
that
James.
description, it's him.
All right. Well, let's get a proper cheers.
Yes.
And let's start this
We
conversation
do a
off
table
right.
tap?
Cheers.
Is that how we do it here?
I don't give a
House
shit. It
rules.
doesn't matter. I like how you have your own koozie just equipped.
Yeah, so
He's going for that.
Yeah,
that ad money.
my wife does sailing. Her family does sailing. So I've been integrated into that upscale lifestyle. So bringing a nice leather koozie with some stitch work. on it. It's on brand.
All of us, I feel like, have different stylings that we bring. He's the married guy, so I feel like he's the one that would show up with a leather koozie. I'm the kind of guy that'll show up in like an emperor shirt and drink the fanciest drink at like a bar downtown. Alex will just show up at a bar and he'll just be like, give me a 12-pack of Miller and let's play a show.
Yeah.
That is, we bring something different to the table.
Nice. No, I think that diversity is great. There's like, you're like a yin yang, but with somehow a third shape in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't always like that. It really wasn't. I mean, this band really just started as a way for me to become a better audio engineer. Because at the end of the day, that's really where my heart and soul is at. It's just at audio engineering, and I grew up in the Clarion area, and a lot of people weren't really into the kind of melodic death that I was really into at the time, and like mid 2000s, late 2000s era metalcore, like Howard era Kill Switch, and like Parallels era As I Lay Dying. So I saw it as just a way of being like, yeah, I'll just do this myself. And I met Cameron whenever I was a student at Clarion University. We were both in the marching band at the time, and he was into the radio program there, and I always wanted to do like a heavy metal theme show. So we just started talking. I showed him some of the demos that I had for, what was it, like Liars and Remembrance at the time?
Yeah. Yeah, you just had those two. I remember you had a notebook of lyrics that when you first brought me into the project, my first thing was, let me see the lyrics. I sat down, corrected all the grammatical mistakes, and then said, all right, let's begin.
Because I couldn't get out of like that mid 2000s, late 2000s
well, you
era.
said when
like,
you wrote that stuff, you were what, literally 15 years old?
15, 17.
Right.
Yeah. Liars and Deceivers being the first song I ever wrote. And that was, man, I go back and listen to that, and I'm just like, I can't stand to listen to this anymore.
I think that there's something fun that happens whenever you go back and revisit shit that you wrote when you were like, you had no idea what life was.
Oh, yeah.
But like, you know, you're trying to write something deep. It's just like so funny. Like, oh, if you only knew, you motherfucker. It's gear up.
Yeah, we had that moment at a practice, maybe a month or so ago. I was like, yeah, let's do Liars. Let's try and put it back in the set list. We played through it, and I looked at you at the end. And I was like, what is this song about? I hear myself singing the lyrics, and my first thought is, what does this mean? And I can't think of the answer anymore. I'm too old.
I remember you were just like, yo, we have time. We should do Liars. And I'm like, why? Why? Why do you want to do this? He's like, we should totally put this in a set. And I'm like, no. And then we went through it, and you're like, okay, yeah, you're right.
No,
he was that
right.
again.
That was a good call.
I think that you could probably just rewrite the lyrics and nobody would know. If you like the music.
Well, yeah, I mean, we probably could, considering that's something we did want to talk about while we're here.
Right. And so that's, as an aside, that's a really interesting thing about the time we live in right now is I think Future has done it, Drake has done it, Kanye's definitely done it. So at least on the rap end, I don't know of any rock or metal bands that have done this, but revising your album after release because of the way streaming works now, it's possible. We even had a moment where I looked at you and I was like, hey, I have this new vocal line that I do live. Can we just throw this in and change the track that's already out and has been released for 2 weeks? And you obviously said, hell no. Why would we do that? And I'm like, because we can do that. You can just pull it off Spotify and we'll change it.
It was hard enough getting that original version of Night off of Spotify and then just being like, hey, I know we've been a thing for like 7-8 plus years, but you have this version now, get rid of it. It's obsolete. It's garbage. Here's the one that you want. This is the one you want.
Yeah, no, listen to this, please. Yeah.
There's some really dumb things that happen sometimes with like trying to upload a song to the internet that has already been uploaded in one case. Like maybe like, oh, I'm recording. So with the Normal Creatures album that just came out.
Yeah.
A couple of the tracks, I think we had like pre-released them. So I was trying as like singles or something. and I can't remember exactly what happened, but I was trying to re-release it. But because iTunes already had a song with the same name and the same BPM and everything, I couldn't upload it. So fun fact, I think the first 4 tracks on the Normal Creatures album on iTunes are like 3 BPM slower or faster to get it through
Really?
the system. Yeah, I just like time stretched it, like the smallest amount to get it through the algorithm.
Now you're more. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Now you're more of a production guy, Brandon. How much effort would that take? Because you now have to consider if I don't know that much about production. If you're time stretching, don't you have to worry about pitch now?
No.
No.
There are 2 different ways that you could go about it. You could do it monophonically or polyphonically. Doing it in a polyphonic sense would adjust pitch. Whereas if you would do it, it's honestly been so long. I remember we tried doing this with like some of your original demo vocals on Avant 4.
That's right.
Where we were like testing to see if we wanted to like do like a harmonized part, and it just didn't work out. And you're like, oh crap, I have to retrack this. I'm like, nah, dude, I'll just copy it and just pitch adjust it. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with the power of our current state of technology, but there's also some weird shit like, this is my music, why can't I just upload this to iTunes because it's already been uploaded? Well, it's different. It's a different, I don't know. I wish I remembered all the exact details, but the only way I was able to upload it was by definitely just time stretching the master the smallest amount.
That's insane. And I mean, it just goes to show that like we live in an incredible time in the music industry where streaming is so accessible and you can really do a lot to it, but it's not perfect. Like, for example, the band shirt I'm wearing, The Midnight, they're like a synthwave band. On Spotify, they're listing that they're playing in Youngstown next month. But what is actually interesting is that Spotify mistook them for the metal band Midnight.
Okay.
So that show is not listed on their website or any of their socials anywhere. But like, I got a notification yesterday that said like, yeah, The Midnight's playing in Youngstown next month. I'm like, no, there is no way they're playing with a band. There's no way that they're playing with other bands like these. I'm trying to remember what exactly the other band.
Sure.
Like you'd look at it and you'd be like, there's no way.
Sure. Yeah. So as far as, Shadow of Corvus goes, let's get through the boring shit real quick. You're a heavy metal band.
Whores.
Oh yeah, those guys.
Like you'd see that like Laser Wolf, Lopan, Whores, and you're like, there's no way.
Oh yeah, that's Blackout Cookout. I want to go to that.
Yeah.
Aside, back to us.
As an aside, yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier released a new record that you wanted to change 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Kanye, tell me about it.
All right. So
How's Hansfield treating you? You staying there?
yeah, no, I've been living inside of Heinz Field. We're trying to work on a self-titled album. I've been living in there wearing a bulletproof vest, sleeping on the floor of the locker room, classic Kanye initiative. So no, our new album, Separation. What was the release date there?
July 23rd.
July 23rd, a bit of a concept record about light and darkness. We try to turn it on its head in a way that feels original, but like looking back at the lyrics, like anyone could have done the lyrical comparisons we're doing here. But pretty much we sat with this record, said we want to have a consistent narrative throughout where it's basically a group that tries to harness some life-extending force that manages to break a dam, reawakens a group of undead soldiers called the Legend, which then chases this group throughout the narrative and plucks them off until the end, where you hear them basically become victim of their own mistakes. So the idea of the record there is that, conceptually light and dark are flipped, going toward the darkness. It's where night, like black out every star, make this darkness ours. Mm-hmm. We're trying to take that idea and somewhat turn it on its head and say, what if you took possession of your mistakes and follies in life and looked at yourself and said, those are good, and sometimes the pursuit of perfection harms others. That's where I was in the mindset. don't know that we lyrically get there. I get a little sci-fi for it to kind of tie together, but that's essentially the crux of our songwriting process on this record.
I could tell you rehearsed this because I think that is probably the clearest that you've ever explained the concept of the record yet.
I'm glad you said that because this whole time I was like, holy shit, this sounds dumb. Oh, dude, this is so stupid. Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like it's the clearest that you've kind of explained it. Really, if there's only one song on the record that I feel like kind of doesn't really fit that narrative that you're speaking of, it's the one that I wrote lyrics for, which is the title track.
I mean, Separation still works. I guess instrumentally, what we were trying to do on this record was take all of our influences, everything that guides us as a band, and say, can we prove that we can do this? So our EP was a testament, like, can we at least tolerate each other and make 5 songs? Where this record was, can we start to branch out? Can we start to diversify in our sound? Let's take a little bit of doom metal. Let's take some classic thrash. Let's take mellow death. Let's do some acoustic metal and some more ballad-like stuff, and let's branch this tree out, find out what sticks. And I think, we haven't started writing anything new, but I think our direction next time is look at the reception we get from this and say, now we have a path forward. Now we have a sound. You know, every great band has a sound. Your Iron Maidens, your Slayers, your Mastodons, they all sound like their own thing. And I think that's what this record, we branched ourselves off like an octopus and said, let's see what we can pick up.
Yeah, and there was a lot of different inspirations from this record. I know for the title track, I took a lot of inspiration from like songs from the North era, Swallow the Sun.
Yeah.
Like I would kind of argue that song in of itself is just a ripoff of like, I'm trying to remember the name of it, From Happiness to Dust.
Yeah.
Where like the middle section of it, where like the spoken word part is kind of just like a ripoff of that. But then there are other songs on the record, like Virtues, that kind of takes inspiration from like Leveler era, August Burns Red, but with like the kind of like triadic harmonies that you would hear like in a Death Clock record. Because I'm a huge fan of Death Clock, and I've always been so inspired to like layer as many different guitar parts as possible. Because like most of the metal that we listen to, there isn't a lot of melody in the vocal line. So Brendan's way of getting around that was just layering as many guitar parts as he could on top of each other.
Yeah.
And I remember like a couple of years ago, just to like kind of test that theory and like really understand that from a grand perspective, was as a solo thing, Cameron helped me film, but I recorded a cover of Death Clock's The Galaxy, which in my opinion has the most guitar layers that you could possibly find in a metal song. There's like seventh chords that are like split out between like 7 or 8 different guitar parts, like octaves on top of each other, and like there's the 7th on top, and like there's the 5th on the bottom and stuff like that. I remember when I recorded the video for that cover, I had like 8 frames of video all going at the same time. And I'm just like, this is getting crazy. Like how could a band possibly expect to play something like this live? And they still did. I mean, with the advent of modern technology, they were able to pull it off. But just like, if you were thinking of like mellow death back in like the 90s, like where it started with like Dark Tranquility and In Flames,
At the
how
Gates.
would they, and At the Gates kind of stuff, like how would you expect that to work? Like, I remember even listening to the Jester Race and Horacle for the first time and being like, how did they pull this off back in the 90s? Like, there are so many different layers on top of this, and that's really where, and for me as a musician personally, that's where I take a lot of inspiration from. Just trying to make like the biggest sounding production.
Sure.
as I
And so that
possibly can.
question was the catalyst for this record is, how did they do it back then? How can we do this? So that's really what we were aiming for. Alex, I don't know if you have any thoughts. You really weren't involved until we started playing live. So for that, we're sorry. We'll get you on the next one.
For reference, Alex has been in the band for well over 3 years now, but a lot of the writing for Separation was kind of done before he started playing live shows with us. So in terms of like what's next for us, we're really excited for what he's going to bring to the table. Because I mean, like all of the drums on the record are programmed, but
Spoiler
alert.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint you. I think you've seen the memes about that guy who always asks bands.
Yeah.
Sorry to disappoint that dude. It's all programmed. You're not going to find a single acoustic drum here.
But we're hoping to change that for the next one. And I will say that since bringing Alex into Shadow of Corvus, he really helped me inspire a lot of the drum writing, especially for Separation, because like I remember I would like send you demos like through Facebook Messenger and just be like, yeah, I feel like the drums could be better here. They could feel a little bit more open. And then we'd like go rehearse the songs with Alex, and then he'd like throw in a fill or something, or like he'd change up a part that I programmed, and I'd be like, fuck, this is so much better than what I could ever come up with. And then I just go back and be like, how did he do that? Could a program like that? So as much as the drums are programmed, Alex is as much as part of this record as Cameron and I are, because all of the drums are kind of inspired like how he would play them. Like, as I was programming them, I'm like, how would he play this? How would he do this fill? Like, okay, yeah, that feels more open. This feels more realistic compared to just, keeping the velocity at 127 the whole time and just sounding like a deathcore band.
Sure. So you guys were on a live stream that I did around the time, I think around somewhere a little bit before the album came out, right?
Yeah.
It was a couple months.
Yeah. So, but during that time, you had talked about how it took you a while to get this album together.
Oh, yeah.
And I think after just listening to you talk for the past 10 minutes, I can completely understand why it took you so long.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just very obvious to me that you guys have like this, it's this like crystal clear focus on what you want. But the issue is that like being an artist is nothing but fog.
Yeah.
So it's how do you find this perfect thing when you're like lost in the sauce of just trying to like create it and like simultaneously learn? And as you learn how to do different things, it changes everything that you did before. And it becomes like, there's like these times where it's like you like find like a new fucking plugin, or you figure out something different you could do with your voice. And it's just like, holy shit, we have to go back to the beginning of all these songs and rethink the way that everything was done because of one light bulb that clicks.
That was literally like our workflow. I'm not afraid to admit that this record took like 6 years to finish.
Sure.
We recorded and did the demo of Night that we had on streaming services for like, 3-4 years?
Yeah, it
something
was
like
uploaded for about 4 years.
Something like that.
It was up before I was even in.
Yeah, we were still a two-piece performing around Pittsburgh for
We
that.
hadn't even met you at Giant Eagle yet.
No, get it right. We met at that little club in Katanning.
Radioactive.
Oh,
Yeah,
right, because you were playing with
Blacklist
I
and
was doing
Twin Trees.
that double header, and that's where we met.
I remember
you're right.
showing up to that show and you like seeing my my Thunder Horse, and I don't think I had the Falcon at the time.
No.
It was just
No.
the Thunder Horse, and you're just like, if you don't sound check to a Death Clock song, I'm gonna punch you in the face. And I'm like, all right. So I went up there and played it, and you're like, hell yeah.
Yeah, that tracks. I think I saw his jacket, or maybe it was yours. Someone had something Metalocalypse and Trivium
him.
something.
That was me.
And I'm just like, all right, these guys are legit. Let's see what they do.
And I mean, like, to your point, Brian, that was pretty much like that, what you're describing, like a new plugin or like a new way that he's phrasing his vocals or something like that. That's literally what inspired me to finish Separation. Was he would just practice in his spare time. And as the years went by, I moved across the country to San Diego. And as I was living there, and NAMM was happening, I was coming across like new amp sims and like new plugins that I had on my to get list. Whenever Softtube put out the amp sim for the Kerry King Marshall JC M800, I'm like, that's the sound. That is the rhythm sound I've been chasing for years. And that just literally inspired, like, all right, I'm going to spend 2 days and just track all the rhythm parts for the record because they're all written out. Everything's already demoed out. Everything's ready to go. And a few months later, that's when ML Sound Labs came out with not only the the Roots plugin, Fluff's signature plugin, but they came out with the Arc, which is their PRS Archon model. And I'm just like, ooh, layer an Archon with a Friedman Butter Slacks. This is my lead sound. This is, you put these two things together, it just creates magic. You layer triadic harmonies on top of that, this is magic. This is the guitar sound I've been working years to find. And I just didn't have, because I was traveling so much, I just didn't have the capability to like go into a studio or ask someone like, hey, do you have a 6505 I could borrow for reamps or something like that? Mm-hmm. For me, I've always been a headphone guy. I've never been able to stay in one spot that I could just mix on monitors and like commit to just doing that. So I've always been an on-the-go mixing engineer. So for me, having that kind of flexibility that I just be like, yeah, just swap that out. That sounds better than this. Just do this, do that. It's been incredible. And yeah, the point I'm really trying to make here is that it took technological advances to really kind of inspire me, at least, I can't speak for Cam, to really finish this record.
That makes a ton of sense because it's a lot of work when you're trying to do all of this stuff yourself. And sometimes, you know, you can only do so much yourself.
Yeah.
And whether, you know, it's bringing other people on board or, you know, in your circumstance, like the other person that was brought on board is whoever fucking came up with that plugin and introduced it to you. It's just like, you know, there's a lot of collaboration that needs to make this work. Like even if you're recording something as like a solo artist, there's still the collaboration between like you and whoever is responsible for the equipment that you're using to do this stuff. And like, I don't know, all this, you could get really layered and like very, I don't know, spiritual isn't the word, but fuck it. So you could really go down a wormhole. This is like one of those thoughts that I've never really had before until just now. And my brain's going faster than like my dumb mouth can move.
Oh, I know that.
So
yeah,
we're going to shelf that. I'm going to think about that. We'll come back to it.
When Sykes said what he said, I felt that.
So in terms of now you're able to be a band because you have an album that has been released. Mm-hmm. You're not just a two-piece anymore. You have, you know, a drummer and you have a yelling thing and you got the fucking guitar thing. You got all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So what has it been like now playing as a three-piece? Is there any plans to expand or do you intend to keep it as this small core?
I'll touch on that one first. And Brandon might not like me bringing this up. We often miss out on some opportunities because we are a three-piece. I think a lot of, you know, promoters or management groups would look at us and say, well, they're a three-piece, but I think the distinction here is none of us play bass. So there's no solid rhythm in this band that isn't coming from a laptop. And I think to a lot of live audiences, that can be pretty off-putting. And it really depends on the genre. Like you look at electronic music or EDM, pop music, a bassist isn't really required. The performer is the art. So they're there to see one person or at the most two people. But when you get into three people, you start to look at like early Trivium, who were a three-piece, but they had a bassist. And so there is a visual element of, okay, every instrument I see here is also what I hear. So when you have a band like us where our rhythm tracks, a lot of our accessory guitars, a lot of our accessory sound effects and our bass are coming from a backing track, and the people, you know, you see the element there and go, well, I see a singer, but he's not playing bass and I hear a bass. Why? And I think that's a question that a lot of people get asked. And when they don't have a suitable answer, something that they like, they look at that and go, well, maybe this really doesn't appeal to me. So I think we've had a little bit of that struggle. But one good thing to come out of us playing live and really trying to focus more on our live element is a lot of people come away from our shows and go, damn, you guys were legit. You guys were really tight. It was super fun to watch you. And I think that's more of our angle is we try to keep it pretty lively on stage. And that's what we shoot for.
Absolutely. And I know that a lot of people have been like, yeah, you should get a rhythm guitar player or a bass player. I remember watching a video that Adam Neely did a couple of months ago where he was talking about the concept of, is playing to backing tracks cheating? And the deduction that he came to is like, no, the music isn't a sport. You're not trying to one up somebody here. You're trying to put on a memorable performance. And while I can definitely understand that metal and heavy metal as a genre of music is the term he used was non-acousmatic genre of music where people in the audience will want to, if they hear something, they want to see it. They don't want an artificial representation of it. They want to actually see what is being heard, because metal in of itself is a very energetic and very audience-driven kind of genre of music. Whereas if you would go to like a Deadmau5 or an Excision show, something EDM or electronic, that's acousmatic because people can see like a stage full of lights or a laptop on stage or a deck and understand that one person isn't recreating all these sounds live. It's kind of why like Daft Punk and like other artists like that get away with something like that. They can put on a tour like Alive 2007 and people go apeshit over it because that is a genre of music that is acousmatic and people can understand that they're not going to see everything that they're going to hear.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people that go to like a modern pop, hip hop type show, I think that they're obviously they just want to go. I mean, I can't say that this is the specific reason why anybody does anything, right? But I think some reasons would be obviously just to be in the same place as whoever's there.
Like
right?
The Weeknd, for example.
It doesn't. The live instrumentation really doesn't matter. And I think the other thing too, why a lot of times these artists get away with just playing backing tracks is because the majority of these people, especially young people today, have never really listened to music through a stereo system.
Yeah.
So when they hear, when you hear, you're listening to it like on a cell phone, on a laptop, maybe the best experience they're getting is if they have or know somebody with a good car system, right?
Yeah.
But like even a good car system doesn't hold up to like a stadium with like, you know, 1 million fucking watts of sub and all this super sick
and everything's
stuff.
been white balanced out.
Yeah, and like you just hear this music in a way you feel it. Because it's so fucking loud, and with all of the lights and all of the other people, nobody gives a shit if somebody's actually like recreating this music. They're there to just fucking dance and feel and be a part of the thing. But like metal, in a lot of ways, is different because metal, I think, got big because it was like excess in like musical ability, and like to this day, it continues to kind of be that. That's what like drives the culture is like, oh, did you, I remember like being in high school, like, oh fuck, did you hear this Decapitated? This is fucking sick. Did you hear Origin, that drum, the fucking, what's that snare? Is that one hand?
Yeah.
This is crazy. You know, like all that kind of stuff. It's like the excessiveness is what always seems to drive metal. But with pop and stuff, it's like the music in some aspect, like the performance of the instrumentation is rarely what is talked about. The performance of the vocal, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, I think we were still both at Clarion whenever we saw that like Excision was like starting to tour. Like the big market term behind his tour back then was like 250,000 watts of sound.
Right. Yeah. It was all about volume. And like to your point, no other genre has such a focus from their audience on technical ability than maybe other than the fine arts. If we're talking about classical symphonic performance or we're talking about opera.
Wind ensembles.
Right. Nowhere else is technical proficiency a concern. You look at pop music, it's not about technical proficiency. And up until recently, I would say, with the advent of more glamorous producers such as Phineas, Billie Eilish, or we're talking about, again, Kanye West and his elaborate productions. But even then with hip hop, we're talking about rock music, punk music. Technical proficiency is never a concern for that audience except for metal. And I find that really fascinating. And I guess the other thing to my point is, as you know, being a man who's in a metal band yourself, metal fans are incredibly understanding, aren't they? They're just very reasonable people sometimes.
I mean, the ones that I enjoy hanging around actually are.
The ones you surround yourself with, yes.
But like most of the time, those people aren't people that only listen to metal.
Yeah.
I don't really know very many people that only listen to metal that I actually like.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. There has to be somebody.
Oh, yeah. No, there definitely are people.
But for the most part, it's like, I think that like, no matter what the genre of music is, like if you only listen to hip hop, I'm probably not going to get along with you very well. Or if you only listen to punk, I'm probably not going to get along with you very well. It's hard for me to relate with that as somebody that loves music so much, to just be like, oh, do you love music so much, or do you like love the subculture that the music is attached to? And 100%. Most of the time, that's what it usually tends to be, right?
Yeah.
And I think another big thing too with why technical ability doesn't matter so much in terms of a lot of genres. I think it's like more like personality and attitude based.
Oh yeah.
And like there's like a weird thing sometimes in metal where like, you know, if you have the technical ability but you also have the attitude, then like people don't like it in a weird way. Like there's like, it needs to like, there's a really like fine box that a lot of the people that maybe you're talking about kind of like put like what metal is supposed to be in. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I'm like, fuck that, right?
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, when I hear like what a lot of modern metal has become, I'm also like, fuck that, you're doing too much. So it's like I'm like aging myself and like becoming the thing that like, it's weird, but I try to be like very self-aware of it too, because it's like when I think about like, even though I wouldn't necessarily consider them like metal, I guess kind of, but like if you have like your Animals as Leaders or like Polyphia or any of that sort of stuff, I would never say that those bands are not talented and great at what they do. And I totally understand why they resonate with an audience. I 100%. Hate that music. I absolutely just do not like that style of music. Like the technical swagger with like the attitude and the like good looks and the nice clothes and the fun, pretty melodies.
And the $5,000-$6,000 custom guitars.
It's like too. It's just like too much. It just feels. I don't know what it is to me.
I think it's just artificiality. It feels like the heart isn't there. And maybe
sure,
Alex can speak on that a bit. But like you being in a pop punk cover band, most of your crowd is just happy to be there and have drinks, aren't they? They're
not just a cover band.
Oh yeah, no. That's
he doesn't want to. Yeah.
But no. I mean, that's what's nice about. I don't want to say what's nice about, but you know, I play in that and.
Midnight Lights, by the way.
Midnight Lights. And I'll fuck up a drum line completely. And I'm just like, I'll sit there and I'll be pissed about it for about, a song and a half or whatever. And then we take a 15-minute break and I'm like, dude, you're fucking killing it. I'm like, all right, maybe I should just stop giving a shit. And then the show goes that much better the rest of it. But yeah, metal has that spot where, I have no idea actually where
No, you were on a train and then you decided to get off a couple of stops early.
Yeah.
Hop back on the train.
We're very the closed-minded metalheads are just terrible.
I think
I lost it.
The way that I could kind of equate it is like maybe I did my first show working on the staff at the Roxy Inn, and I remember all my friends that have ever worked security or on shows around Pittsburgh, they're like, dude, I would rather do like 20 metal shows than one country one. Because just everyone in metal is, for the most part, pretty open-minded, pretty open to non-perfectionism, They're very understanding about how we are humans and how we are prone to error.
Like service industry, from a service industry aspect.
Absolutely, yeah. Whereas with country, the idea is that people are there to literally just get trashed, trash the place that they're in, and not treat anyone with respect. That's not a dig on the genre itself. It's more so along the lines of like everyone I've ever spoken with has always said like a good majority of like metal fans that they've dealt with are not closed-minded, and the ones that are closed-minded are just as bad as country.
Sure. I think that, like digging into, if we rewind a bit and kind of like talking about those more modern, like proggy metal, nice haircut bands, right? Whatever you want to call them. I'm just going to call it nice haircut metal because I don't know what else to call it.
Which I'm kind of like on the inverse of you. Like you hate listening to that. I hate playing it, but I love listening to it.
I think there's like something about it that feels like, so like there's a lot of modern hip hop that I don't like because I feel that a lot of the subject matter talks about things that I think are completely unobtainable as a human being.
Oh yeah.
Now, obviously, people can do it because those people exist. The money, the wealth, all that stuff, right? I think that some of those bands that I mentioned are like instrumental versions of that. This is like something that you cannot obtain as an artist. Obviously, they can because they did it.
Oh, yeah.
But for me as a listener, I have a really hard time listening to something that like I don't understand. Like it feels like inhuman to me. And I think that maybe that could be like a compliment to some people.
Oh, yeah.
But like for me, it's like I don't want to listen to something that sounds so perfect that it's become artificial. It just seems like all the roughness has been scrubbed down with a Brillo pad.
Right.
And I want it to still have that grit.
Well, that's, a lot of people that whenever Megadeth's gone back and remastered Killing Is My Business, like so many goddamn times. Am I allowed to say goddamn?
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
Here we are
but
saying fuck.
There's just so many people that it gets reissued and they're just like, fuck no. I want the version of that album that was like the $20, like ketchups.
Yeah, did you listen to who's In Flames that does remasters?
Yeah,
the Clayman.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, bro, barf. It's so bad.
I
heard the chorus to Pinball Map. I'm like, what
I really
the
liked
hell?
them.
I
really liked them. I think it sounds
I like
better
the drummer
now.
on them now. I like Tanner Wayne, but
I respect why you think that it is garbage. I think it is its own flavor.
Sure.
If you were talking about comparing it to the original 2000 recording, it is trash. But if you look at it from a different perspective, like they are literally moving forward with what the trend is in the industry these days, it's okay.
Sure, I think that.
I mean, that said, remastering is different than re-recording.
Absolutely.
I hated the re-recordings is just what I'm like.
See, I prefer to on my normal day, I prefer those re-recordings because there is an eloquence to them. And maybe this ties into what you were saying about that impersonal, that non-attainable feel. It's a little too polished. But if I'm not feeling all that aggressive, I prefer those. If I just want to get mad and lift some weights at the gym, I'm going to those original recordings of Clayman because that mix is dirty as shit and I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Those were clearly some angry guys when that album came out and it sounds great. But the remasters to me sound great too as a man who's in his 30s and married because there's more polish, there's more accuracy to the performance. I think there's a little bit more melodic attention paid to it, so it's a bit more of a careful production, and I can see why that doesn't appeal because you go back and listen to the first one like, man, I feel like I can lift 100 pounds more than I usually do. I'm gonna punch through a brick wall when I listen to this.
For me it feels like I don't need like an HD remaster of like old movies. Like it's fine. Like, I guess there may be some people that need to see it clearer on a 4K TV.
Right.
That's how they like it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's kind of like, bringing this whole conversation kind of back to the beginning and like, talking about like, oh, like this is the guitar tone that I've been chasing, or this is the mix that I want. This is how this is supposed to sound. Or like, you fuck something up, a drum part at a show, and people are like, well, it sounded good to me. It's like, it's always going to be different to everybody else, right? So that's what's so interesting about like the whole idea of like, especially in heavy metal, it happens because there isn't just like songwriting. There's such a focus on tone and like having like, oh, like I need to get like,
100%.
there's no other genre that's like, man, I really need to get these pickups to change up the fucking game on this thing. Or like, you know, man, I should have, you know, for this room, I really should have brought this other snare because it hits harder with the way the ceiling is. And like all this kind of stuff.
That's
But
way
like
too much thought.
you get it. Like, I mean, I've been around people that are like that. And like, it's really cool from a technical perspective, but also it's like, at the end of the day, if our job is to be entertainers and entertain people, how are we doing ourselves a disservice possibly by putting so much time and energy into things that ultimately go unnoticed by anyone besides ourselves?
In a sense, yeah, I feel like there is time and energy that is well spent by doing that because artists and, I mean, as you were calling it, entertainers, at the end of the day, they should be happy with what they're producing. And that's kind of like when we were on the topic of Clayman 2000, that was a guitar tone that I was constantly chasing. That was one that I felt like no matter how much money you threw at the problem, you could never attain that guitar tone. It was a very in the moment, in the space, at the location kind of a tone.
Sure. You also had you had to master it hot for a digital CD.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a lot of that
You had to
extra.
master it a lot harder than you would for streaming.
Yeah. Good old late 90s, early. Well, I guess depending on how you want to look at it, but for the most part, early digital recording.
Can you imagine that NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys were the hottest things on the market, not in terms of just like marketing, but production for like a good year or so? Like they were the loudest things on the market for like a good year or so until somebody was just like, yeah, I can make a mixer or master that's louder than that.
Well,
Fuck it, I'll try it.
Well, the majority of that pop music, especially of the time, it's like, it's just kick snare vocals and like an ooh, ooh, and like a weird like type thing. Like there's not really a whole lot of like, just like maybe like some like Korg Triton like string chords type thing.
You had those Triton strings that were in almost every Destiny's Child song or anything that Timbaland produced.
Yeah.
You had that weird electronic organ that showed up in Hit Me Baby One More Time, and then about 75% of the Backstreet Boys soundtrack. You had those string hits. You remember the 90s string hits?
Dun, dun.
Yeah. Everything. Metal had it. Pop music had it. Fucking country. There's Garth Brooks songs that have those string hits in them. That was the sound of the 90s.
Well, I think it's like, you know, you have all of these vocalists that are trying to sound the same. So all of their vocal range is sitting in a certain EQ frequency. So like you start thinking about, you know, okay, well, how are we going to mix our, you know, we use our kick and our snare. Like you're giving space for everything in the mix. So for the most part, you just have like, you know, this gnarly bass, and then in the vocal space that you have is like, okay, well, let's do strings, weird organs, because it's going to fit in the mix. The vocals will still sit on top of it nice. It's a good, simple mix. It could be super layered, but it's not a bunch of shit fighting for attention like you get in a metal mix. I think it really took some time for like digital technology to get to a certain point that metal could evolve. And now it's been this interesting thing to watch over the past couple decades where, like, you know, I used to say for a while, like, metal wouldn't be where it is now if it wasn't for the technology that we have. And I think we're getting to a point now that metal is actually encouraging the technology to get crazier. Yeah. Because like they want to do wackier things, but like it's like, okay, well, we can't do it with what we have now. So we just keep creating different plugins and, you know, all sorts of, you know, fun like multi-effect guitar stuff, like any of like what's the one that all the fucking Grey Walker guys want to get? Oh my god, the
probably an Axe FX.
No, not Axe FX. It's not Axe FX. It's not the Helix. It's not the Kemper.
The Neural
DSP.
Quad Cortex.
Yes, the Quad Cortex. That's the one.
Everybody wants that guy. It's so hard to get a hold of now. But going back on your topic of, or the topic that we were on earlier, which was at the end of the day, I feel like artists and entertainers do need to kind of be happy with what they're producing, as much as they are in the room and they're there to entertain. And most people don't give a shit about like you're doing like 40 different patch changes during a song because you can. artists at the end of the day should ultimately be happy with what they're producing. And that's kind of why it took us so long to do to release Separation, was just because, like, I remember sending you so many different versions of mixes and stuff, and you'd be like, oh, well, the bass is too gnarly, or my vocals aren't blending, or they're too low, or I don't really like the way that I harmonized that part, or something like that. And I'd just be like, okay, how many times are we gonna go through this? And I remember the EP also being that way too, where we would spend like 5 or 6 different sessions getting different vocals, and then by the time like a couple of months before we released that EP came around, I was just like, dude, it's done. I'm literally doing
he just
2 or 3 dB.
Can I?
I'm literally like doing 2 or 3 dB adjustments on one EQ band or on a fader.
Dude,
I'm done. It's done.
I've been there when Grey Walker recorded Without Control. We recorded all the drums with our friend Matt, and then we recorded everything else ourselves, and I mixed it. And because we wanted to like really like, we had this whole idea of like, you know, we're going to be in control of everything. And I mix most of my other music and like record a lot of my own stuff, like pretty much everything. Grey Walker's the exception. But it was just like, I think sometimes it's too much. With Normal Creatures, it's a little bit easier, or Sex and New Violence, however you want to look at it, right? Mm-hmm. Since there's still people that have no idea that change has happened, but whatever, fuck them.
They'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out eventually.
The power of the internet.
It's still kind of like my thing. So like I can run things past people and I'm like, do you like this? Yes or no? And if I get like a reason why they don't like it that I agree with, I'll change it. But if I don't agree with it, in the past, it would just kind of, I'm like, okay, well, it's my fucking record. That's not the case anymore. I'm getting away from that. But with Grey Walker, it was a lot harder, and we started getting into a lot of this shit. So when we did the EP, we're like, we're not fucking doing this. We went to somebody else. We recorded the whole EP in a day and a half, and then we did it all in a day and a half.
No.
Yeah.
Le Cachot?
Yeah.
No. Yo.
We recorded that entire thing in basically 2 days.
In the room?
No, so we did all the we did drums in one night, all the drums in one night, and then I think we did all the drums and the bass in one night, and then the guitars and vocals.
Yeah.
That's pretty efficient.
It was like in a weekend.
One take, Jake's.
We did vocals for Separation an entire weekend.
Yeah.
And
But that was just vocals.
Oh wait, you know what? Actually, wait, I think technically, I think Joey went over on Friday night, set up the drums. Saturday, I think he recorded all the drums, and I think they did guitars and bass, most of the guitars and bass on Saturday. Sunday, I came in, recorded all the vocals, and then I think they did leads. And then we didn't listen to it until it was done.
Wow.
Right. Well, until the first mix, right? And that was like maybe like a month and a half. So you get completely separated from it, pun intended. You get completely separated from this thing, right? And then we listen to it, and we're like, you know what? This sounds fine. You know, there's a couple things that need adjusted, but there was like that distance from it, and just hearing it clean, it kind of put us in that perspective of not getting lost in the sauce of like okay, up, down, 2, 3, 4. But again, as somebody that wants to be an audio engineer and started the band with that aspiration, I don't expect you to hand over the reins to record the next Shadow of Corvus with somebody else. But I would highly recommend maybe one day for funsies doing a song with somebody else.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, moving forward, whatever the future entails for us, I definitely want to get other people involved, because in terms of Separation, it was like the first piece of content that we had that we could kind of call our own. Like Cameron mentioned earlier, the beginning of the NDP was just a proof of concept. It was a way of showing that we knew what we were doing and that we were capable of not only writing songs that didn't sound like absolute shit, but we could make productions that also didn't sound like absolute shit.
Sure.
So Separation of itself was the first album that Cameron and I really collaborated on. Whereas when he first came on to the band, I had pretty much all of the beginning and the end done. It brings us into an interesting story. The title track from that, the beginning and the end, that was him pressuring me to add one more song to the EP.
Oh, I was such an asshole. I text him like twice a day for 2 weeks, and it's
for like
hey,
2
did
weeks
you add
straight,
a new track? We need a track 5 for this EP.
You're like, what EP has 4 songs? It has 5. Write another one. Are you done yet? Shut the fuck up and finish it. And I'd be like, eventually, at first I'm just like, stop it. I'm a college student.
Right.
I don't have time for this. And then eventually I'm just like, fine. If I do it, will you just shut up about it?
What did you name the early mix? You sent me one.
It was like the beginning of the end V1. This is the final version. I don't care what you think. .mp3.
Yeah, right.
That's very pop punk.
Also, I think, to be fair, now that I'm thinking about it, to backtrack to the Lake House show recording, we did actually do a complete pre-production of the entire EP ourselves before we went into the studio.
That's streaming content.
So
That's
it was
Spotify content.
it-
That's a live version. That
it was rehearsed before we went in.
baby.
But I think
still,
the other
yeah.
thing too, with like the way that I'm interested to see what the process of your songwriting is going to be like moving forward now that you have like a dedicated drummer in the unit, because when you're writing like in a DAW, it's really easy to be like, oh, okay, well, these MIDI drums are here and there's a demo bass here, but we just either re-record it or switch out the plugin, and now it's like the final bass track.
So that's
and
something I still talk to him about. Is like, dude, this part's too simple. If we could just put a fill here, we could. And that was where the pull it down and put it back up conversation happened. I was like, yeah, but he does this fill at like a minute 13, and like I'll send him specific timestamps of shit. I'm the princess and the pea of this band, and why this took 5 years is because he might be the audio engineer, but I'm the meticulous one. I look at the mixes and I'm like, hey, the bass is maybe 2 dB high, and this sounds a little raspy here. Can you check if this is clipping? And also this fill, you have this drum part written here. Maybe we could add a snare fill. It seems a little locked in and repetitive. Yeah, I'm a pain in the ass to work with musically, but like he's the musical knowledge. I would say you're most of the ability, like really your drum parts. You come into one of our practices and you just hit something and I'm like, holy shit, why did we never think about that? It's just raw
I
talent.
think that's exactly what we were telling him on the way over
Right.
here. We're just like, if there's anyone that has the ability in this band, it's definitely Alex, because he'll come to the table with something that we never even thought of, that just makes it sound like it ties it all together and makes us sound like a band.
That's what I think is like huge about like the power of collaboration in music, and just bringing other people on board that you trust and just letting them go, like listening to their ideas and things like that. I remember I had a really hard time with Sykes and the New Violence in the early days, because it morphed from just me being a solo hip hop performer to like, oh, okay, well now I've built a band, but these are like my songs. But I'm like, okay, but you're a good bass player, you're a good drummer, you're a good guitar player. That's why I want to work with you. And the whole reason I want to work with you is because I've heard you do cool things on your own before. So why would I not allow you to do the cool things that inspired me to want to work with you in the first place? Here.
Yeah, right.
But like letting go of that it was really, really hard.
I agree with that. It was very hard for me, because like I remember even whenever you first came in, Cam, for like just doing some demo vocals on the EP, I'm just like, no, this is the way it's going to be. This is, I have it exactly like this. It has this particular meaning and this particular message that I want to send. And then after a while, I'm just like, yeah, just do whatever the fuck you want. Do what you think sounds fun. We do that with Alex too. Like I remember when the first show we ever played with him was at the Funhouse for Yins Fest in 2018, I think it was. And I sent him the EP. We were still playing covers at the time. We still do from time to time. But I remember showing up and just sending him like the backing tracks and just being like, here are all the drum parts. Feel free to keep them as verbatim if you want to, but I want to see what you come up with. If you can top this, if you can make it better than what I can come up with, then kudos to you. And ever since then, he's just like, he'll throw in a fill that we didn't expect, or like for something that we want to do later down the future. He put drum parts on it that didn't originally have it. And I'm just like, man, this sounds so much better than what we originally came up with. And ever since then, we're just like, yeah, Alex, throw a GoPro up. Just play over it. Show us what you can do. If you could top what I have programmed, this is going to make us sound even more legit.
Yeah.
The downfall of you. You just get content with great value, Mike Portnoy.
I don't know. I mean, I am also kind of like a bias towards like Mike Portnoy style films.
As someone who grew up where you and I grew up, ain't nothing wrong with great value, dude. If you're hungry, that's still fucking food.
Okay, Dollar General brand Mike Portnoy.
Okay,
Give
now I'm
yourself
off
more
again.
I like that you say that because there's been several times that we've been playing Greywalker shows, and I always call ourselves the Dollar Bin Darkest Hour.
We call ourselves the Dollar Bin in Flames or Death Clock. My God,
We need to do like the Dollar Bin Fest.
oh, dude, that's a festival in Pittsburgh. Right
We're not
there.
even
People
Dollar
would
Bin.
show
We're
the fuck up for that.
We're the 50-cent sticker that you put in front of the barcode so we won't scan and overcharge.
Dude, that's a festival.
Yeah.
No,
I'm so into
jokes
that.
aside, I would love to play with Greywalker. Like straight
Yeah,
up.
well,
100. I
absolutely.
remember even telling you that on Friday. I'm like, yo, we got to do a show. Especially now that you have Jonathan in the band now.
Yeah, no, I would love to do it. I remember that you had invited us to do your album release show, and we weren't able to do it.
Black Forge, yeah.
But one of these days, it will happen. We're always down to play. It's just adults. It doesn't always work out. That's really all
We
it
all
boils
have our own
down
separate
to.
lives.
We are kind of like the emblemization. I'm not sure if that's a word, but
No, you're-
fuck it,
yeah,
I'm
you're
rolling
right.
with it. We are the emblemization of all of us having different lives.
Yeah.
He's the married guy. He's the pop punk drummer that plays in a death metal band sometimes. And I'm the one that's still trying to figure out what the fuck I want to do with my life.
But no, a little bit back to your point, we were talking about bands and, conflicting with that idea of trying to fine tune things. I would say, and I had this thought earlier and I'd been holding on to it. If you're trying to start a band, the thing you need to realize first and foremost is that having a band and being a member of a band is a constant confliction with your own narcissism. Every day you're in a band, you're looking in a mirror and saying to yourself, I am not the most important person here. Everything I do cannot be the standard. So when we go into the studio and I have a bunch of rewrites and you shut me down, it is my duty as a band member to say, you know what? You might be right. Let's hear you out. Or you have a drum part that he has written something else in, a Logic plugin. And it's your duty to put your ego aside and say, you know what? Let's hear him out. Let's hear this snare part. Let's
Sure.
hear this tom fill.
100%.
So I would say, I didn't mean to get too deep into it, but if you're looking to start a band, understand that you will be conflicting and looking at yourself in a mirror every moment you practice, every moment you play, every moment you write, and saying to yourself, I'm not the most valuable part of this here. I need to contribute, I need to disperse my abilities, and I need to listen.
Yeah, and I think that, there are going to be situations where there are going to be people that you may or may not work with. It depends, but they exist, people that think the exact opposite.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think that it makes it really hard when those people are a part of a band because they don't want what's best for the band. They want what is best for themselves.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. I've seen it happen in metal bands a lot because you have guitar players that don't always understand that, hey, this part is allowed to sound dumb because the drums and the vocals are going to sound cool, or vice versa.
Right, all
Maybe the
three of us
vocalist, hey,
cannot be doing a
vocalist,
solo.
this is the
I can-
guitar solo. Shut up.
Right.
Don't put vocals over
exactly.
top of the guitar solo. In
I have totally never been guilty.
and I think
it is what it is.
And I
mean,
think,
you
like-
could even attest. I'm totally never been guilty of
But
that.
we work through that, and that's part of being a band. Is you talk through those moments. You're willing to communicate, and like Brian is saying, sometimes you have a person join a band, and it just doesn't work, and that happens in life. You have coworkers at work that you don't like. You have friends that kind of piss you off from time to time. That's a reality of being a human, and being in a band's no different. You need to look at those situations and say, hey, maybe I need to tell this person to step aside. Maybe you don't need to be playing a lead while I'm doing a sick vocal, because the point of this passage right here is that I'm doing a sick vocal. This is my time to shine.
Yeah.
You'll have yours,
yeah,
but I need mine.
it's interesting. I think ultimately it's like, does everybody in the band just want to make the best song possible? And then whatever you got to do that, get through it. It's interesting because with Grey Walker, we sometimes have conflict of what we think that end result of a best song possible should be, because we all have we like have our similar shit that we like, but we also like a lot of other shit. You know what I mean? Like some of us lean way heavier into power metal than others. And then some of us lean way more heavy into like the more like industrial, weird, experimental stuff, right? And then others that lean way more into like traditional, and like we're trying to bring it all together, right?
Yep.
And it could be hard and I'm just like, I'm always the guy that's like, yo, like those drums need to be less punk rock, more Sepultura.
Yeah.
And like, let's dumb down the riffs.
Sepultura.
Like, let's make it more simple. I mean, because like they're coming in with so much complexity.
Right.
I'm like yin and yang, balance it, you know?
Yeah.
To speak on the narcissism part, I'll go back to a different band that I was in, my first band, and I won't use the name of that band. You guys know the name of it. I won't use the name of people.
I may have even said it. Don't go back and listen to the, but do listen to the podcast.
Actually,
great.
Yeah, fuck it, I'll say it. Twin Trees. Anyway, we had this guitar player at one point in time, and good guy, and I hate saying it, but it drives home the point of narcissism. We would sound check everything, sounds as good as it can in shitty clubs that we'd play, and then it's like, cool, you guys go on half hour and just sit there and volume knob up, volume knob up. And by the time we'd get playing, it's like, what happened? We sound like shit. And we're like, this guy's like 20 decibels louder than the entire band. It just got to the point where we're like, hey, you're kind of fucking out, man.
Yeah,
You're gone.
Yeah, there's
like sometimes you just need to like, not the most important part of this band. And yeah.
Yeah, there's been definitely situations. I think that one of the great things that can come out of playing shitty clubs is like you really learn how to get a balanced live sound if you care.
Oh yeah.
And you learn how to like deal with sound engineers that may or may not care, may or may not know what they're doing. You learn how to talk to different people. Now, like I could walk into any club anywhere, say hi to the sound person, see how they mix the first band or two, and I'm like, or even a song. And I'm like, I know what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
this is person A, this is person B, and like when we get on stage, I know what to ask them for and what not to ask them for. You know what I mean? Like there's times where like Grey Walker plays with backtracks, and there are some shows.
So do we.
Where it's just like, I mean, you have to. We don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, you have a full 5-piece,
so
you can get away with it.
But I mean, like, there's been times where it's like, okay, no backtracks tonight. Why? It's just not gonna happen.
It's not
gonna happen.
It's not there.
I played a show once, and we're playing. We had like a sub member or whatever, and he starts playing the intro riff. I'm like, that's funny. I didn't know that guy had a wah. I look over at his pedal board. He doesn't. The monitors are just so fucking terrible that his guitar's coming through like wow, 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 wow. I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna fucking suck.
That's why I kind of feel like the fact that we've kind of compartmentalized as much as our live show as we have, we could walk into any size venue, whether it would be something like the Roxian or something like Roboto, and we would be able to put on the same quality of show as any other time.
Yeah.
That's just because I feel like we've kind of figured out our sound. We've figured out our live rig, what we want to sound like, how we want to present ourselves to an audience.
Yeah.
And that may deviate from show to show. Like, for example, when we did our album release show at Black Forge 2 in July, that was like a once in a lifetime kind of thing where all of the bands that were there were just, we were all homies and we got on stage and we're just like, let's just mix everyone around on different instruments and let's just see what happens.
And the crowd was red hot for everything. We could have played Hot Cross Buns and people would have gone wild. Like everybody was so ready to just have a good time.
We could have played Californication for all that matters.
Hey, that's actually a good song.
Hey,
Hot
no,
Cross
I
Buns
like.
is-
and we
I like
would've-
Red
and
Hot
Are
Chili
you
People
trying
would
to
be
talk
like,
shit on Red
"Oh."
Hot Chili Peppers right now?
No.
You better sit down.
We could have played
No.
Danny California and everyone would have had a
Yeah,
good
and
time.
you know what,
Fuck
Brandon?
off.
People would have liked it because Red Hot Chili Peppers are good.
We could have did a metal cover of Bad Guy and people would have been like all over it.
Hey, Bodum did Oops, I Did It Again, so don't
What,
count that
really?
out.
yeah, but that's
that's
90s.
nice. No.
That's 90s pop though.
I think that
So?
most of the time people just that are going to a show want to see somebody on stage that's really good at what they're doing, enjoying what they're doing. And this even goes back to like needing a bass player or not, or a rhythm guitar player or not. As long as the three of you are really, really good at what you do, chances are people are even going to realize it. You know, it's going to be like me watching Aladdin and then a half hour and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a cartoon. I forgot. I'm just wrapped in the story. You know, it's just like, if it's good enough, people will get distracted. And I think that that's why sometimes like a Drake could just stand on a stage by himself.
Oh yeah.
He's just that good at what he does. He can hold, he is the presence that can hold the audience. So
there was this artist I saw. I went to Sad Summerfest a couple of days ago, and they, for whatever reason, a couple bands dropped, Story So Far, and I forget the other one, but this chick singer, Charlotte Sands, got added to the bill. And she only had a drummer on stage. It was just drummer and backing tracks. And her performance was just that energetic that no one gave a shit that there wasn't some pretty boy strumming, 4 chord songs. And no one gave a shit that there was nobody else on stage. She put on a great fucking show. And I'm like, good for her. Like, she announced, like, they had to, like, remake tour merch for the next gig because people from Pittsburgh were all buying it out.
Awesome. And I feel like
I can attest to that. I'm like watching her. I'm like, God damn, she has like no one else on stage with her aside from that drummer, and even he's not doing crazy shit. She's just bringing that energy, that performance, and like that's what's selling it. And I'm like, damn, good for her.
Yeah, and I feel like we've kind of figured out how we can do that as a 3-piece in Shadow of Corvus.
If we bring the energy, we'll sell. 5 tickets, but we'll sell.
We'll sell. Those 5 tickets are important to us.
Hey, man, we sell 5 tickets and 15 T-shirts. I consider that a good night.
Amen
Chalk
to
that up as a win.
Now, the only sacrifice is me having to crush a beer can on my forehead, but you know that's one I'm willing to take for the team.
Or in the case of our album show, it was a liquid death can.
Yeah, a liquid death can and then several glasses of wine. I don't know why I decided red wine was going to be my stage accessory.
You were trying to be Gene Simmons and drool it out of your mouth instead of spitting fire.
Real fucked up by the end of that show.
Oh, so was I. If you watch the Pull Harder video, yeah.
Oh, yeah, when you do the Viking hat, that ruled.
Oh, that was such a great show. Shout out to all my homies at Black Forge for hosting us. That was one of the best, if not the best show I think we've ever done as a band. And that was the first time we ever did a show in like 2.5 years.
Right. As we all know, the lockdowns really messed things up, and us being
COVID
meticulous
sucks. Spoiler.
also messed us up. We really didn't want to get a show out there until we were ready to drop the album.
And moving across the country puts a wrench into things too.
Yeah. You were living in a real shithole out there. No,
he lived in Brendan Small's basement.
Yeah, you were living in a real shithole out in San Diego.
Yeah,
it was one of the nicest places in the world.
It had its own challenges, but it had its own perks. The perk of it was that I was clear-headed enough that I could just record everything for the album just from start to finish.
Also, the coastline had to have been real nice. Huh?
The coastline.
Yeah,
was
that's
really
what
nice
I thought.
too.
Yeah, don't sell that
and walk
short.
to the beach and just scream, and then walk back after half an hour.
Just take out a 7B out onto the coastline and just Andrew Wong it and just all the parts.
There you go. Yeah.
So, as this train that we are currently on is rounding the station back on home, is there anything that we want to talk about that is coming up? Any gigs? Anything special? Anything delicious? Or would we just like to let people know
we got a
where you
couple
can find
things.
Is this thing that delicious?
Oh, it's scrumptious, dude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then we got a couple cool things coming up. First off, we have a show at Roboto on October 9th, opening up for a band that we've played with a couple different times, Speaking in Tongues and RVNT. I don't think we've ever opened up for.
No, they are a touring metalcore band. I believe they're based out of Albany, New York. I'm not entirely sure
Sounds
on that
about
one.
right.
There's also a co-headliner, Desolence.
Not Desolence, Desolate.
Desolate. Yes, they are another. I think they're closer to like a post-deathcore type of sound. Maybe they wouldn't describe themselves that way, but I don't really know how to go for it. Pretty much, we're the old guys in the lineup. We're the dad metal.
Yeah.
Everyone else is playing that more North Lane, that newer style of metalcore.
Mirror kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we're definitely the more classical metalcore. So it'll be an interesting lineup. We'll have to see if we look too much like boomers on stage compared to everyone else. But yeah, the 9th come out.
Oh, is that an Iron Maiden shirt? Oh, Dad.
Yeah, just wear like really oversized hoodies and keep it up the whole time, and like you'll fit in.
Before
and
every
just
song, blow a vape cloud, you know?
don't let anybody see you. Don't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Don't be social. You'll fit right in.
We need to raid a Supreme store. We need
There you go, yeah.
I need
Raid
Adidas
Supreme.
track pants and some white high tops.
You need to look like the off-brand version of Run DMC.
You mean Beastie Boys?
Hey.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
But no, we have something else we're working on.
We
Yeah.
do. Those 2 days that we mentioned that we spent in the studio tracking all of the vocals for Separation, we also tracked all the vocals for something else. There was a reason why earlier in the show I mentioned that I hate going back and listening to that original recording of the beginning of the end, because I'll not even just the demos, but just like what's available on streaming, I'll go back and I'll just be like, huh, how did I think this sounded good at the time? But that's the meticulous part of me as an audio engineer, that I'll look back and be like, man, there's too much mid-range in that guitar tone. It sounds like a cardboard box.
And so we'll announce that coming someday, we are going to re-release it's a full re-recording of
it's
the
a full
EP.
re-recording
Yes.
of the beginning of the end.
Yeah, we redid all of the parts. We changed up. I think you even changed some of the rhythm guitar on Penance. Like, we changed the song. It's a different song now.
Yeah, we kind of took this like how In Flames did with the re-recording of Clayman, which I know you're against.
Yeah, hopefully
I know,
you hate this less.
Hopefully you hate this less.
Listen. I don't like it, but I'm happy that it brings you joy.
That's him.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can appreciate what it is.
I'm happy that it brings anybody joy that likes it.
Also, CLA mixed it.
particularly the In Flames boys themselves. If they feel happier with it, good for them. It's hard to find happiness in this hellhole. So if you found a little bit,
Ain't that
tight.
the truth?
Ain't
tight.
that the
So
truth?
yes, we are someday. We don't have an announced date. I have one more session of vocals to do
Yeah, and that's
because
just
I found
because
some shit I do live that I was like, let me try this a little bit differently than what we already tracked.
But those 2 days we spent in the studio doing vocals for Separation, we also did vocals for that as well.
Yeah.
I remember walking out of there and you're just like, I'm done talking for like 2 whole days.
I burnt myself out. So yes, we are going to re-release a re-recording of the EP, the beginning of the end, coming. I don't know.
Whenever.
22, early
25.
22.
2035.
Yeah,
Let's
2035.
Let's go a Nomura style here.
Yeah, you're right.
Tetsuya Nomura style. KH4 coming 2046.
All right, I'll say this: it'll come out before Tool's next record.
Low-hanging
Which
fruit.
they also beat us to the punchline on that. We joked for years that like we're gonna release this album before Tool
Yeah,
does.
and we were sure of
and they
this.
did it, and we're just like, God damn it, they did it
Yeah, now
before
we have
us.
nothing to live for.
Yeah.
oh man. Well, as we wrap things up here, I think I'm just going to do an outro. I think we've done it. We've talked about the band. We've talked about a plethora of other things. Music,
Talk a lot, maybe
life,
too much.
Some more
life,
important than others.
life, love, and happiness, and all of that shit. So
And leather koozies, don't forget about that.
don't forget about the leather koozie. Show that puppy off. That's good. That's great.
That's enough.
There we
Settle
go.
down.
Shout out.
That's enough.
Yeah, one more time. Thanks again to Noble Creature for. I mean, again, you don't sponsor the podcast,
Yeah, it was delicious.
but I will talk about Noble Creature forever.
Yo, hit Brian up. Hit him up.
What he's basically trying to say is that the show is not sponsored, but he wants it to be.
It
He's
doesn't-
like, we are
No.
not sponsored by Black Forge, but we want to be.
Hit us up.
Hit us up.
Anyways,
Yeah,
that is all, folks. Thanks so much for being here. One more time, Shadow of Corvus.
Thanks, guys.
I'll
Thanks,
be
guys.
back. I'll be back again next week with another episode. Same time, same place, same channel. You know the drill. My name is Sykes. Start the beat. 2021. Whoop whoop. Thanks for listening, and we're done. That was a podcast.
That was fun.
It happened.
It happens.
Sorry we talked too much. We really just blather.
Can you imagine a podcast where nobody talks?